Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I think it's important for people on the Cape to understand sort of where she comes from, literally, and where her heart is. Kim was the former mayor of Salem from 2006 to 2023, and she really took over that city when it was facing some significant challenges. And under her leadership, that really turned around. But because of the role that she held up there, she understands how government works, but she understands how travel and tourism works too. And we've seen that reflected. I had the pleasure of serving on the governor's Economic Development Transition Team and then on the Economic Development Planning Council for the state that produced the Economic Development Plan that resulted in the Economic Development Bond Bill that's in front of the legislature right now. And the last time there was an Economic Development Bond Bill, tourism wasn't even mentioned, even though it's the third largest industry in the state. With her influence and with the influence of the governor as well, we're starting to see tourism play that important role that it really does need to play on the state level and certainly in some of the regions. So without any further ado, because she does have to get back to Boston, Lieutenant Governor Kim Driscoll.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. I'd much rather stay here, though. Who wants to go back to Boston? A rainy day on the Cape is better than a sunny day in most other places, I'd say, right? So thanks so much for the opportunity to share a few words with you, some of the work that's underway in the administration, and some of our hoped-for goals with respect to how we think about tourism, art, culture, and the opportunity to really lead Massachusetts with both empathy and urgency. And I just want to say from the outset, both Governor Healy and I feel such gratitude to be in these roles, to be the first all-female team leading the Commonwealth, first all-female team in the nation. Yeah. And we know, like, with these opportunities also comes responsibility, and we are really trying to focus on how we can grow the Commonwealth, create a pro-growth culture that recognizes some of our strengths, and also figure out how to build a Massachusetts that's more competitive and more affordable and more equitable. And I say that because we not only are in charge of works and operations for today, the investments we make, the policies we put into play have a big impact on Massachusetts over the next decade and beyond. And that's the way we're looking at this. How do we think about being good stewards of what our needs are today, but also thinking about the eye to the future in a place that is so historic, and we know how important that is. I want to recognize Representative Diggs, who's with us. Kip has been a strong partner in all of the investments we're making. We really are all about Team Massachusetts. You know, there's an old saying that you win with people, right? And we need good people in the right places to help advance strong goals. And speaking of that, we've got Kate Fox here, who's leading the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism. Kate and I know each other a little bit as she worked in Salem as our Destination Salem director, and knows a whole heck of a lot about tourism promotion, marketing, and how we make sure that we have statewide tourism plans. I often felt like communities and locals and localities and regions were kind of left to themselves to market and think about how to promote Massachusetts and their particular attraction or region. We're not thinking about it that way. We are a team. We have so many unique regions, so many things to celebrate in Massachusetts. How do we help amplify the great work you're doing in this region, whether that's with dollars or policy shifts? We want to be that partner, and that's part of what Team Massachusetts is all about. So I just want to focus on competitive, affordable, and equitable for a minute, because we talk about those three words a lot. Kip probably hears it a lot when we talk about budgets and economic development plans. And competitiveness is really important. There are a lot of states that are looking at Massachusetts and coming after some of the industries that we have here. We know that we just can't rest on our laurels. It's not just like we're always going to have a good economy because we've had a good economy. We need to think about ways that we can hold a mirror up to ourselves, get better at what we're doing, and make sure that we are competing. And it is a competition, not only as a nation, but frankly globally. Right? The world and the globe has gotten smaller. How do we think about positioning Massachusetts for a bright future? Affordability. Probably our biggest challenge in Massachusetts is the high cost of living. Housing contributes to that. Childcare contributes to that. How can we help make investments and policy shifts to develop the type of housing policies we need across the Commonwealth that can reduce the cost of living here? Our biggest outmigration right now in this Commonwealth is not seniors retiring to Florida, although I might aspire to do that sometime. It's actually 26 to 35-year-olds who who are finding it really difficult to live here, to purchase a home, to do all the things that many of us in this room had a chance to do. That's one of the reasons we're really leaning in on the housing front, as difficult as that can be. And I want to celebrate and recognize any local officials who are in the room. As a former local official, you're on the brink, the front lines of so many of the issues and challenges that we have as a state, and we really want to partner with you on many of these areas. But housing, childcare, trying to be a Commonwealth that recognizes we want thriving families here. We want folks to be able to age in place with dignity and respect. We want to be able to be a place where young people may come here to go to school, but they can stay here and raise a family. And for us, housing is a big piece of that. You'll hear a lot more about that. But affordability, think about how we can make our state more affordable as we think about those sorts of issues. And that's all of us, right? And then equity. And we're not just talking about racial equity, but we know there are impacts in our Commonwealth and disparities that exist, everything from healthcare to education. There's geographic equity. There's large parts of this Commonwealth that sometimes feel like Boston forgot about them. We want to make sure as we think about what's a thriving economy, it means no matter where you live, whatever your zip code is, you have access to opportunity. And that's why we're also primarily focused on where do we make investments, the places we may need to put our thumb on the scale to get the sort of investments and activity that we know you need to have to be a thriving economy and frankly a thriving community. And with that backdrop, let's talk a little bit about tourism, because that is near and dear to my heart. In Salem, we found a way to make Halloween last 31 days, which is no easy feat, right? I think Kate would say we've made it last into September and November as well. And look, that was all about partnerships. When I was fortunate enough to be elected the mayor of Salem, an amazing place, right? Great history, an embarrassment of riches when it comes to history. From the great age of sail to the first millionaire in America hailed from Salem, Elias Haskett Derby, to beautiful institutions like the Peabody Essex Museum and many others. And I can say this about so many of our regions, right? I really feel fortunate that we have this rich tapestry of people and places and an authentic history that help ground so much of what we do. But we do have this responsibility that comes with that. How do we make sure that we're thinking about tourism as an industry? What does that mean? And honestly, we don't need anybody else coming to Salem in October. Check the box. We have figured out how to capitalize on, frankly, a pretty notorious part of our history for folks to enjoy, and showcase some of the other things that Salem is known for. We also had to really build trust and relationships with locals, who it is an influx of people. We're a city of 45,000 people, and we'll see 1 million people show up in a 1 week period of time on Halloween alone sometimes. So there are impacts on the ground, what that might feel like, and how we helped share and showcase what the impacts were and how we could work together to try and address them, like where you get around in Salem, how you get around, how to get people to take the train, how to message Halloween is not an opportunity to relive your fraternity days, but really a family-friendly opportunity to come to the community, and how we can showcase what those impacts mean, and some of them are real, for our community in terms of dollars and jobs, and what that means for the run-of-the-mill services that locals have to produce, educating our kids, keeping our neighborhood safe, investing in roads and bridges and things like that. Those resources go back into the things that lead to that high quality of life. And you love it when you're pitching something and then folks regurgitate what you said. You know what I mean? Yeah, they're understanding it. And when we would talk about it's crazy busy in October, and this makes up for January and February, when it's a little bit quieter, when that snowstorm hits our restaurants and nobody's showing up, or we've got a snow emergency and parking's, a mess. And folks really began to understand. For a little bit of additional activities that happen in the fall, we're able to enjoy a lot of things all year long by those of us who are lucky enough to live in the community. And I think that's part of what happens in this region as well. How do we share and showcase in this amazing beauty that you have and these natural assets that bring people here? It's a source of pride, right? I used to say it's kind of an advantage to live in a place where other people go away for vacation. And how do we also look ourselves in the eye and talk about those impacts without losing sight of what it means in terms of resources. And in the Cape, it's pretty significant. I know that just in 1 year alone, we've got 5.5 million visitors that have come to the Cape, obviously most of those folks in the summer. And we know that thriving tourist industry also needs help and support. And that's one of the things that we're hoping to do as a state, is to think about statewide policies that impact what's happening on the ground. And frankly, you all are really good at it here. You have a foothold on know what you need to do. Looking around the room, we've got a range of individuals individuals and businesses here who understand the tourism industry. How do we support and empower some of the work that's underway? Some of the ways we do that is, frankly, by investing in tourism promotion and marketing and helping amplify the dollars that you're spending to get more folks here in a way that contributes positively to the economy. Kate Fox, our Mott director, is going to talk after me a little bit about our partnership efforts and some of the resources that we're building off of. But we know in this first year, we've already put $40 million in what we call destination development grants. A lot of those go to smaller organizations because they know who they're marketing to. They might know their festival or their placemaking opportunity. How do we leverage some state resources to grow and support those efforts? We know the Cape and Islands is obviously a strong travel and tourism destination. We want to make sure you have the tools you need to continue to promote those opportunities. And mostly, we want folks to know this is a real industry, right? Tourism is the third largest industry in Massachusetts. Frankly, it always has been. And sometimes I think we, as a collective we, sometimes think about things like life sciences or climate tech or advanced manufacturing, also important industries, and think about travel and tourism off to the side as a nicety. We're not doing that in this administration. This is jobs. This is a roof over somebody's head. This is food on a table tied to individuals who might be working in a service industry and hospitality industry and all the concentric circles that go with it. It's not just who's serving you the food that you might enjoy, it's who designed the menu, who's the HVAC system that we're all grateful to have, who built out these fine establishments and contribute to maintaining them. This is an economy that has a number of concentric circles. We want to try and grow and support that. You know, I'll also say, in addition to tourism, art, and culture and the investments we're making, the state every 5 years prepares an economic development plan. We're required to under the statute. That says, let's look at what are the industries that we need to support, what are the policies that we might want to shape. So the 5-year period was up last year. Our Secretary of Economic Development, Yvonne Howe, comes from the private sector, like real go-getter, so grateful to have her, enlisted a years-long listening session. And I don't mean just like we're gonna come in, we're gonna talk at you, and then we're gonna leave. Like dug in, industry-specific, as well as really spent some time engaging with individuals and industry across Massachusetts and developed what we're calling the Mass Leads Act. It's a 5-year bond bill that does some things that we've done in the past. Any of you who have received MassWorks grants or communities that have had, or what do I call our bread and butter economic development assistance programs. We have tax incentives, we have housing development incentive programs tied to economic development. But then we also want to look at where are the areas that we think we have a foothold or a sweet spot in Massachusetts. And for us, it certainly is art and culture and tourism and making sure we're thinking about this as a holistic industry, helping support what's happening on the ground in unique places. The promotion and destination needs in the Cape may look very different than Springfield, where we have the Basketball Hall of Fame, the home of Dr. Seuss, amazing campus of cultural institutions that we want to try and make sure folks know. We also haven't done enough around things like agricultural tourism and food tours. I know we're talking about like cheese and ice cream. If anyone's been to upstate New York for a wine tour, who thought you would be in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes for a wine tour? It's pretty good. It's actually very good. How do we think about our assets and map that out in a way that increases the number of folks who might be visiting some of these districts? We've got more folks going to the Berkshires from New York than we do from Boston. I have a problem with that. Like, we don't want Yankees fans in the Berkshires. It's a big deal. So part of our task as we think about these budgets and these economic development opportunities are knitting these opportunities together and relying on locals and local partnerships to help us do that. You are always going to know your destination better than we are, but how do we help amplify your voices and frankly spread out further opportunities for us to promote destinations, put the itineraries together, give it the zhuzh, I like to say. We can help then sell that in concert with all of you to get the sort of visitors we want and grow the economy. The other pieces of the economic development plan are also meaningful because I guess man cannot live on wine alone, right? Is there something like that? Although I think we probably could. So that means we need to do some other things, obviously, within the economic development plan. And that are some of our tried and true areas that we have strong footholds that we want to grow. One of which is life sciences. We want to lengthen our lead. If you did not know that, we are the global capital for life sciences. These are both the research and development, the pharmaceutical companies, the venture capital go with getting life-saving treatments and therapies to market. That all goes through Massachusetts. I mean, there is not a big pharmacy or research and development, healthcare, life sciences company that doesn't have some kind of a foothold here in Massachusetts because of the strength of both venture capital and the amazing big brains we have around Massachusetts to help make these groundbreaking discoveries. That's a place that we want to make sure we're lengthening the lead and frankly growing the way that economy works. It's wonderful to have all the R&D happening, the labs happening, but we also want to do biomanufacturing. We want to think about this industry supporting more than just one complement of people. The next big breakthrough for us is really in climate tech, whether you're talking about clean energy hubs around the offshore wind or opportunities to think about solar and battery storage. There is a tremendous amount of bandwidth within Massachusetts growing a really strong climate corridor and a clean tech frontier. Some of that is obviously aided and abetted with federal funding. And the work that already exists within life sciences, if you pivot and think about how we develop a carbon-free Massachusetts, we're also going to be a leader in how we develop a carbon-free country, how we move to meet our really important climate goals. The other two areas are also emerging here in Massachusetts, and that's applied AI. Obviously, artificial intelligence is a big piece of how we think the future economy is going to be working with. We're thinking of this as offense, not just defense. How do we think about applied AI? And then layering that into things like advanced manufacturing, areas we already do well, robotics, the sort of machines that help tend to drive some of the important aspects of the work, whether it's in how we produce things, as the future of the Industrial Revolution, it started here in Massachusetts, and how we think about growing the future for everything from life-saving medical devices to the ways that we use machinery that is changing and shifting very, very quickly. Those are footholds as well, and we think about both investments of dollars, programs to incentivize the folks who are starting here to stay here, and then how we make sure we're thinking about communities and geographically. We have won two pretty big federal, I guess, competitions, and I should say both the governor and I played a little bit of hoop growing up. We both played hoop in college. You may have heard that theme. Thank you, Kip. We weren't boxers like Kip. We played some hoop. So we're ultra competitive. We are ultra competitive when it comes to other states and how we go after and attract funding. And we set up right away. I mean, there's historic amounts of federal resources tied to the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill. We wanted to make sure Massachusetts got its fair share, especially because as a nearly 400-year-old state, we have aging infrastructure. And we're the home to so many firsts, the first park, the first library, the first subway system, which is still creating some challenges at times. But we have older and outdated infrastructure, so every dollar we can get from the federal government, it's one less dollar we have to come up with either locally or from the state, and those investments really matter. We set up a federal funds office. We're trying to make sure, as we think about our economic development dollars, how can they overlap with federal resources and federal programs, helping grow opportunities to move forward. And two big competitions the feds put out, one of which was Chips and Sciences Bill, tiny semiconductors that we all have in our phones and our cars and so many things. Many of the innovations tied to that happen in Massachusetts, but they're often produced overseas. There's a big push in ways that we could safeguard our country to better control the semiconductor market, bring that back here. Lowell and Merrimack Valley is a microelectronics hub that was granted by the federal government, meaning we're investing over $100 million in microelectronics tied to some of the industries we already have with academia. How we got that? Higher ed, research and development firms, and private sector coming together with the state to make a proposal about why we should be the microelectronics hub. Really a big opportunity for us from an economic development perspective, and again, garnering some federal resources. The other space is the federal government's what we call medical moonshot, known as ARPA-H. The federal government said, we want to know how we can get better life-saving treatments to market faster. How can we cure diseases? How can we cure cancer? How can we put the great research that we're doing to work faster? ARPA-H has found hubs across the nation. We are one of 3 hubs that is in Boston and Cambridge, tied to life sciences and venture capital. How do we develop these life-saving drugs and get them to market faster? That's happening here. Really good for the economy as we think about growing the jobs and understanding the responsibility that we have for the work that we're doing to leverage it, to do better and to do more. I think it's frankly a hallmark of Massachusetts. We don't settle. We continue to find ways to get better, to innovate, and we need to think about how we can do that in more industries. So this economic development bill, in addition to tourism and art and culture, also leans in there. And I'll just want to close with saying, as a mayor for the last 17 years, my lens very often is still very much through local government. Like some of the most important, things you rely on in your everyday life are delivered by local government. Who's educating your kids, or keeping those neighborhoods safe, or fixing those roads, or driving your local economy, investing in those places you make memories as a family or as a visitor. That's being driven by the local government. And we know in order to grow the way we need to grow and to support the sorts of industries that we want to see happening in Massachusetts, we need to make investments there. So our communities are seeing uptick in things like municipal vulnerability programming grants, ways that we can invest in that older infrastructure here. We know the wastewater challenges on the Cape. We know that while we grow, we also want to preserve the character and the history. And we think we can do both, that we can have the housing that meets our needs and demands, and also make sure that we're preserving the most beautiful aspects and the geography of what makes places special. I like to call it development by choice, not development by chance. That's the way we lean in and work together with our municipalities, whether that's technical assistance, dollars for infrastructure, ensuring that that partnership continues. I hope you've picked up the theme that we really, when we say Team Massachusetts, it's not just a slogan, like we really mean it. When we have everybody working together, that's the private sector, that's higher ed, that's our nonprofits, that's our local government, our state government, and our federal government. When we craft that vision and deploy everybody to go after it, that's when we're the most successful. And that's the approach we're taking when it comes to this particular industry. So I want to congratulate you for the work you're doing to build a strong travel and tourism industry in the Cape. It does feel like the bread and butter of so many of our memories are tied to the amazing opportunities that exist in this region. Please know that you have an ally and a partner in the administration who understands the challenges and wants to work with you to overcome them. And most importantly, wants to make sure we continue to grow the economy in a way that works for you and your families to offer a high quality of life as we move forward. So have a good day. Thanks so much for having me here.